it was this idea that anybody can play music and that you don't need a lot of skill. In fact, a lot of skill gets in the way of people's participation. So find out what's possible. Hum, squawk, bang, walla, picking up instruments that you couldn't play, making twangy notes, making soundscapes, reading different kinds of scores. This is not music as I understand it at all, but a kind of beautiful experience with these groups of people, you know, like just this kind of ramshackle assortment of people who were joined by this thing called community music. And I thought, this is really quite something. The genuinely democratic and participative way of making music.
Hello and welcome. You're listening to the TOWNSOUNDS Oral History Podcast, celebrating the musical heritage of Kirklees. This episode is entitled Together in Any Weather, Community Music in and Around Kirklees. I have a number of inspiring musicians and musical facilitators joining me for this episode. Phil Russell started us off with that lovely quote. He is one of the founders of Hoot Creative Arts, and we'll hear more from him shortly. I'm also joined by the music therapist at the WomenCentre Huddersfield, Emily Druce, the director of Musica Kirklees, Tom Meredith, Sean Leonard, who was business development manager at Beaumont Street Studios from 2002 to 2008, and Eddie Dobson, one of the founders of the Yorkshire Sound Women Network. Here's Eddie now.
I believe strongly in the influence of your environment on your learning. If you understand how to set up a sound system, you're more likely to just take it and do it rather than have to depend on somebody else. So if you know your staff, that's empowering basically. And if you have that environment which is low risk, where you can really play and become absorbed in that expensive equipment or even less expensive equipment, but you've got access and you can play with it, you can develop that confidence and make mistakes without an audience. And I think that's really important.
This episode will end with a special feature about local open mics, with interviews from audience members, musicians and comperes of the open mic scene. So stay with us until the end to hear Lyndon, Natalie, Ethan, Adam, Monika and Jess talking about open mics.
I think because there's people from so many different age groups and walks of life and stuff, it's just, there's a lot more to talk about. I'm pretty sure the open mics taught me how to socialise actually, because I'm not very good at it, but I am now.
Community music isn't a style or genre of music, so there aren't necessarily any audible cues. Rather, community music refers to some kind of value system or intention or purpose regarding music. As the name suggests, these values are related to the power that music has to affect the communities that gather around it. Community music is often about education and improvement of mental well-being. It's also about trying to make sure that everyone has access to music creation. Today, we'll be absorbing ourselves in Kirklees examples of community music. We're going to start with Hoot Creative Arts, a mental health and arts organisation which has been running for 22 years in 2023. The way Hoot works is they run group creative art sessions for people with mental health issues or concerns. These sessions are quite diverse in nature. It could be a pottery session with people with dementia. It could be a singing group in a hospice or a dance class for adults with mental health issues. It could be a DJ workshop in a youth club or songwriting in a prison. It all comes down to the premise that music makes you feel better. To tell us more, I was lucky enough to talk to one of the founders of Hoot Creative Arts, Phil Russell. We spoke online during the pandemic, him in his shed, me in my garage.
So that's when Hoot started, about 2001. We started doing some sessions at Mind, and then we started doing some sessions in Huddersfield and scrabbling together little bits of money. So we ended up with a kind of about 10 or 15 African drums, some songs. That's what we started doing, really. We didn't really think too much of anything. We weren't, it wasn't meant to be highfalutin. It was just like, this works, doesn't it? And so we just gradually, people said, can you come and do one here? And will you do one here? And people really liked it. They really liked sitting around in a circle playing drums together. And it had that whole spirit of almost everyone can hit a drum in time, even if you just make one note. And it's a powerful beast, isn't it? It's about, we can do this together. There were some ideas from the therapeutic community history that we were trying to apply within a arts and health culture. And also what was going on is it was one of those times when what we were doing coincided with the zeitgeist. So there was people were kind of realising that what we were saying, people needing many more different approaches to build resilience and well-being than just dealing with their problems, was now becoming the norm. So what happened was that people were then looking around for organisations who had a more progressive approach. So they then started commissioning and the whole setup became much more robust, and we got, decent-sized contracts to deliver services consistently.
Over the years, I've been fortunate enough to work for Hoot on several occasions. In fact, they gave me my first ever proper freelance contract. One series of sessions I ran was in Dewsbury. In each session, we went to a different part of the world. We learned about a different country's traditional music, listened to some, and then used that music as an influence for our own creations. We recorded 6 pieces of music over 12 two-hour sessions. Here's an example. I'll let you guess which country this is inspired from. The song is called Catching the Dream. Catching the dream, sitting alone on the sand, under the sun, under the deepest blue sky, oh, sailing by. The charity has had a huge effect on the local area over the years. Without it, the Kirklees music scene would be vastly different.
Being an artist is blooming hard work. I watched Jess run a session recently. I was at her raised voice choir, and I remembered how much attention it takes to hold that group and to know all the start notes and have all the material down and to work out when you've got to move on, to read the energy of the group. I think one of the things that I'm particularly has been joyous in terms of who is this succession of young artists who've come along and worked with us, like Jess and Rob and you and Phony, of course, and Bart, like loads and loads of people now who, they found a place where they could feel at home with their own music and their own ideas, and then they were with us for a bit, and then they've gone off and done other things.
He's got a little demon, a devil that just cannot be denied.
We worked in hospices, we worked in prisons, we worked with learning disability, we worked in mental health settings. But it's all fueled by this kind of network of people who are very creative and often undervalued. I think it's more important than people would give it credit for, and we often undersell ourselves and don't get paid enough.
The music there is Swing Thing by Phil's band Yellow Goose. Singing is Sean Leonard, who we'll hear from a bit later on in this podcast episode. So as Phil explained there, community music isn't the glamorous world that one might perceive for professional musicians. There's little fame or fortune. There's a lot of challenge and sacrifice, burnout and exhaustion. But the whole thing is made worth it by a dream that has run through this podcast series, I think. From the massive effort of organising festivals, to the financial difficulties of touring rock and roll bands, to the huge number of volunteer hours put into maintaining local radio stations. There is a dream of a more united world, a better future, a more interesting life, a healthier mindset, something like that. People do it in the knowledge that music is a catalyst to a stronger community. The satisfaction in the work that makes it all worthwhile is explained here by Emily Druce from the WomenCentre.
I am a music therapist there. That is my sort of role. It's a mix of running groups and songwriting with women one-to-one. I do bits of songwriting in lots of settings, but there's something about it that the women are just so... It's really vibrant work. They're kind of ready to have a go at writing songs. So many people have never written a song before, and they will sit down and give it a go and then be up singing their own songs, performing, which... Yeah, I mean, you must have found that in your work as well. It still surprises me, though, when somebody comes and then they just take to it like a duck to water. And And then the next thing they want to do is, is share it, isn't it? Which is an interesting one, because I think going back a decade, maybe, there was a lot of sort of always performance, is that okay as therapy, and how do you, but I've just seen it so many times that is a person's personal journey, is first of all finding the courage to have a go at that thing and finding that satisfaction in making, putting what might be really personal or really difficult emotions into the container of a song, and then kind of actually wanting it to come out and share it. Yeah.
The WomenCentre Kirklees run mental health and wellbeing services, counselling and therapy services, and a number of other support services. Their focus is on mental health and support, where Hoot's focus is on music. Emily runs group music sessions and one-to-one music therapy sessions with a varied, diverse and ever-changing group of women. I asked how Emily runs these sessions, how she goes about writing songs with people who have never written a song, and in a therapeutic setting. She explained it to me.
So yeah, sometimes people will just bring something in they've written, and then the work we do together is to do with forming that into song. But more often it is people starting to talk about things and me catching little bits, so that people maybe think something they've said wouldn't be a song, that wouldn't be a song, that's, but actually then sort of seeing that mirrored back and adding something to it that rhymes or has a sound, starts to become song-like. I think then people really fly with that process, and it becomes a joyful process as well. So what might start off as something quite difficult and sad, you suddenly see this animation going on where somebody's kind of threading bits together, and it becomes such a positive process. I love it.
Did I fall through the gaps in your heart and slip unnoticed out the door? Words you wrote me, they just lied. You sold me when you needed my love.
The music we're listening to here is Wasting My Time and My Tears by Emily Druce and Steve Jones, aka Druce and Jones. Emily spoke about her work with women, and as we've heard in previous episodes of this podcast, women are often underrepresented and have less access to experience in some music scenes and industries. This is especially true in music technology. This is a gender gap that local CIC Yorkshire Sound Women Network aims to bridge. Their role is to inspire and enable women and girls to explore sound and music technology in Yorkshire and beyond. Speaking next is one of the founders of the network, Eddie Dobson, discussing their introduction to the music technology world, learning and teaching.
There's something around access to technology, because it's an economic resource. Some people have that kind of empowerment naturally because their mate has got a studio or they've got a computer. You grow up and you see some people have that facility and others don't. Because I grew up in an environment where I had access to all these toys, these sound toys, like the computer and the tape machine, I believed strongly in the influence of your environment on your learning, and how having a relationship that can lead you to feeling empowered. So if you understand how to set up a sound system, you're more likely to just take it and do it rather than have to depend on somebody else, particularly with music technology, particularly in a wider culture where we have this relationship where technology and masculinity are somehow combined together. So I went on to take up a position in Scarborough. And it was really much in the early days of that course, and it was the early days of the creative music technology, which is a new sort of music technology degree. There weren't very many around the country at that time. And it was a quite competitive world, and in sort of subtle ways I was aware that I was being tested. Whether I'd put that down to my gender or not, I don't know. But over the years, I just sort of pushed this aside and noticed the gender imbalance. It wasn't really until after I'd left there, worked at Leeds College of Music for a while, and then I worked at Portsmouth for a while, and I experienced a number of things at Portsmouth that I thought, okay, there's a bit of an issue here. There are various things about this environment that are really exhausting for me, and I think that they were to do with my gender. The typical thing being having a meeting where you end up being the person who takes the minutes or jokes about making the tea. And also the volume in the room. You might have staff meetings where colleagues are really using the power in their voice to be heard. And that's not really a very survivable environment for someone like me who doesn't have a strong voice.
The music we've been listening to is a piece called Bodywork by Eddie Dobson under the alias Dekanter. Eventually, Eddie got a job at Huddersfield University, an environment that has been much more hospitable. During their time at the university, Eddie has been researching, teaching and publishing on electronic music and music technology, often with an emphasis on how those subjects cross over with pedagogy, feminism and gender. Eddie and colleagues kept facing the same issues, a lack of women and girls joining the music technology courses. Eddie had an idea.
Well, I basically sent a tweet out with a picture of a PCB and the moon behind it, because the moon's important. And I tweeted this picture and I said, I'm going to host a meeting for the Yorkshire Sound Women Network, as if it was a thing. And then just said, who's in? Who wants to join me? And suddenly all these people were there. They'd come from Bradford and from Sheffield and from Huddersfield. And we all introduced ourselves to each other and we decided, we're going to do this together. And we all had different ideas about what we wanted to do. The real drive for me was initially to provide those facilities so people know those skills and become empowered. So those two things together mean that they might be more likely to pursue careers or interests in those fields and help to saturate or certainly change the demographic of people in those areas. For 11-year-old girls to understand how a circuit works, basically solder it together and make a noise instrument, and for them to grow a sense of what if or inquisition about technology from that point of view rather than just as a user. The challenge when pushing things forwards in terms of feminism in audio is trying to prioritise and trying to cut a path through that makes change that benefits everybody. The Yorkshire Sound Women Network has 3 key priorities. One is education, so working with young people. One is community, and the other is industry advocacy, to try and address systemic changes as well. Gradually, the organisation has been able to build up, now very significant grants. And that's important because it means that the organisation has been able to employ a lot of people through that funding. So there's an economic gain there as well.
As pointed out there, access to quality teaching and learning is a fundamental source of empowerment, understanding and innovation. Yorkshire Sound Women Network hosts lectures, classes and workshops where participants can get to grips with music technology in a safe, non-judgmental and low-pressure environment. This is the culture that some music teachers and facilitators choose to work in as well. It's about enjoyment, freedom and diplomacy. So staying on the theme of teaching, let's go to Musica Kirklees, who provide lessons and music opportunities for individuals, schools and centres across Kirklees. I spoke with the principal, Tom Meredith. He concurred with our other guests that music should be open to all.
But it's something that we've talked to our teachers about, the whole inclusive nature of music, about how it brings people together. For most people, it's something that just is there to make you feel positive about life. We meet with groups of young people and say, how's it all going? What could we be doing differently? What works well for you and for your peers? And how should we do things so that it means even more to you? You never want to make anybody feel that they are not welcome or not included. So it's the art of classroom management that teachers all learn. You pick up on who's not really quite engaging in the way that you'd want them to do, and you try and change your teaching so you're including somebody. If you create within a young person the passion to want to do something well, then they will automatically want to do things in the best way possible. They'll automatically go for quality. They'll want to know, well, technically, how do I do this? There was a sort of almost like a bit of a dispassionate way of teaching that you taught technique. And this is what people needed, was the discipline of saying, right, you must make sure you do your half-hour practice every night, and this is what you do, and this is how you hold an instrument. And different people will respond to things in different ways. Some people will want to be, to be able to sit in their own home in a room and write songs and record them and put them onto social media. Other people will want to be trying to play the clarinet to international standard and enter BBC Young Musician of the Year and go on and be in an orchestra and all those sorts of things. So it's just, it's making sure that you register what the young people want and where they want to get to with their music making. It's a balancing act, isn't it, like with lots of things.
This is one of the features of community music. It's not about making better musicians necessarily, although you'd hope that might be a byproduct. It's about creating happier people and better lives. Tom Meredith is the principal at Musica Kirklees, an organisation which spreads over all parts of Kirklees, with area managers based in Batley, the Colne Valley, the Home Valley, Mirfield and Shelley. One of the groups that the organisation manages is Musica Youth Orchestra.
And by the time I'd started in 1999, there were no youth orchestras left in Kirklees. We just put out a message to all the students that we had at that time saying, is there anybody of this level who would like to come along and play? And we got over 100 people who said, let's come and have a workshop day. And we asked them to vote on whether they wanted it to be sort of a one-off thing that we did, perhaps a couple of times a term. Did they want holiday courses, or did they want it to become a regular weekly event? The majority said regular weekly event, so we set the youth orchestra up at that point, and it's now been running for 22 years. Usually there's about 60-65 players in the youth orchestra, and they're a wonderful, wonderful group of young people. It's very talented. They come there and want to be taught, they want to learn, they want to do things as well as they possibly can.
And here they are, Musica Youth Orchestra playing some Gustav Holst. I think what Musica Kirklees are doing is pretty incredible. They're giving communities of young people an opportunity to express their musicality in a way that is decided by them. The teaching informs the students only as much as the students inform the teaching. It's a beautiful circular philosophy. Inclusion, flexibility, sensitivity and tact are at the core of community music. Arguably, no one needs these qualities in their musical lives more than young people. Young musicians of today are the professionals, creatives, teachers and innovators of tomorrow. This is seen rather well indeed by our next example of community music in Kirklees, Beaumont Street Studios. It no longer exists, but it did for a while, and during that time it was very influential. This is Sean Leonard, who was the business development manager at Beaumont Street Studios for several years.
We ran a sort of range of different media training courses. They were mainly sort of access level, level 1, level 2 stuff in radio production, sound production and editing, video production and so on and so forth. So we ran those, and I wanted it to be more conscious of its kind of social obligation. Mm-hmm. It had been going more than 10 years before I got involved, and it was started by the Huddersfield West Indian Association, and its original base was at the Hadawi Centre. Yeah, so I saw plenty of opportunity both to link the organisation much more to the disadvantaged and excluded communities that it had always said it was there for, and I could see plenty of scope for that. We took on staff who were black and who were Asian and who were from those communities. We listened hard and constructed the courses around what we were learning of the participants who were coming forward and what they wanted. We promoted it more actively in the communities that we were targeting. It increased the diversity in all sorts of ways of the people participating and training at Beaumont Street. I was proud of that, but of course, it was far from perfect.
This music was recorded at Beaumont Street Studios. It's the Instigators, who we'll hear more about in episode 11 of this podcast. Things changed at Beaumont Street Studios when Sean met a man called Steve-O, now the owner of Small Seeds and Barmarock. Back then, Steve-O was running the acoustic club at Abraham's. It moved to Bar 120, which became Bar 122, and now the venue is called Small Seeds.
So I met him when I went along to a few acoustic night sessions at a bar called Abraham's in 2000. I observed him getting teenage boys or men in their early 20s would turn up, and they'd written songs and they wanted to play them, and that they played them, they then wrote more songs, and so there was this gaggle of people. And so I thought Beaumont Street was running a youth music programme, and one of the things people say, it's difficult to get the boys involved, all of that sort of thing, and yet I was observing at first hand that kind of happening. And so I thought, we can marry up this thing going on in Huddersfield with what we're doing in youth music. We did have another thing running sort of at the time, which was called Ready to Burn, which was part of our youth music programme, and that was a sort of mentoring development programme for young people, young musicians and young bands in the area, so up to 18, I think under 18s who were involved in music one way or another, and they'd get a chance to do, I suppose, a series of workshops, just themselves or their own bands, and then to cut a CD at the end in the studio. And that worked ridiculously well. I think has helped spawn some of what has become the kind of Kirklees music scene, because I'm pretty sure that Chungy went through it, and Ruby Wood went through it, and a few of the few people who've sort of gone on to become kind of local luminaries on the professional scenes. And Steve-O was involved in delivering that. In fact, he was overseeing the delivery of that aspect of the youth music provision.
Sean mentions Ruby Wood and Martin Chung in that little segment. This could easily take me off on a tangent, having spoken to both of them for this project about the local music scene around the early 2000s, but that's not what I'm here to do today. We'll have another episode covering that music scene later in the series. What does deserve a mention here, though, is the open mic scene. Open mics are a vital part of any thriving grassroots local music scene, and Kirklees have a lot of them. The acoustic club at Small Seeds was just mentioned there, and since I've moved to Huddersfield, which isn't that long, I've seen them pop up at the Shoulder of Mutton in Slowett, the Lib and the Riverhead in Marsden, the Junction in Marsh, Wood Street, the Northern Quarter, the Parish, the Turntable, Brickworks, the Jules Verne, all in Huddersfield, the Picturedome Box Office, the Tap House, Hot Banana and the Farmer's Arms in Holmfirth, the Tap House in Batley, the Walker's Arms in Cleckheaton. I'm sure I've missed most of the list out there. And when open mics work, it's because a community gathers there. They feel that the space is trusted and welcoming, it stands for their values and is supporting the local music scene. Like candles on a blustery day, open mics are easy to light, but more difficult to stay aflame. They pop up and disappear regularly. To get a flavour of what the open mic scene is like now, I spoke to a few people. Firstly, we're going to hear from some attendees at the Wood Street open mic. I also spoke to their previous host of 3.5 years, which is a long time for comparing an open mic. She went on maternity leave, but she'd probably still be doing it now, so we'll also hear from Monika.
Welcome to the open mic night. Can I get a what?
I do it for free.
Yeah?
Oh yeah, it's the best 4 hours on stage for me, easily. Get to just be comfortable, everyone's nice, it's a good spot for it, it's chilling. Yeah, I love it. And then the first one was the first time I played guitar and sang on stage. It went so badly wrong, but then I used it as if I'm playing this badly, then anyone can. And I got a few people on the stage. I do that a lot recently, like not play perfectly at the start and then people can be like more comfortable to get on stage. I've been very good at being able to encourage people onto the stage from time.
So I will have started working here 3 years ago, so completely new experience. Yeah, I just think it creates a really nice like safe space where people feel like comfortable enough to go up and perform. I think even just like the way it's compared and how everybody interacts and encourages each other is just really nice. Everyone's really supportive as well, which is always lovely.
The open mic nights, they can vary, but I like this one because of the quite laid back, friendly atmosphere. It's very accommodating, you know, because I don't think like I've always felt like I'm at home in like the whole like drinking culture, you know, and the nightlife thing that goes along.
In my third year of uni, a lot of my friends graduated and then went home, and I didn't really have many friends, and that was in 2018, so I've been coming since then. And I got introduced to it through, you know, Rosie? Yeah, I was painting at a house and she brought me to the Small Seeds open mic, and I've been going every Tuesday and almost every Thursday since, because because I think there is like a huge community, and basically all of the friends I have now are from meeting them at those two things. I don't play any instruments, but I have a lot of friends that do now, so.
I don't know, it's just a chill atmosphere. There's loads of different things going on. I don't know, I love it when it's like someone you wouldn't expect much of comes in and then they just get up and do something crazy. That sounds really good. I think that happens quite a lot here. Yeah, I've been surprised a few times, I think.
I really wanted to pass on what's been given to me through the open mic scene. So facilitate an environment where people can be themselves and can build their confidence musically and personally in a space that is safe and welcoming and encouraging, because I've received so much through the open mics. I basically, you could say, became a musician thanks to the open mics.
Are you going to go back into the open mics?
So it's a bit tricky for me. I've got a little boy at the moment that needs me. Evenings are difficult to get away. I hope I'll be able to get back out there and catch up a little bit and see what the scene is like now.
Nothing you can say when the sea will come and take only the love you gave will stay.
That was Salty Lips by Monika Zlamalova, and it's on that joyful note we'll conclude our exploration into local community music. In the next episode, we'll be delving into the exciting world of reggae sound systems and amplification. Get your earplugs at the ready and your dancing shoes on. We're going for a party.
England's had its own history of lovers rock. If you don't have love, we don't have nothing else. You know, it was part of the culture. Sound systems have always been there. And if you haven't been to a dance, then you need to go, because it's the experience of being in that crowd of people that are all on a unity vibe. Everyone loves the music, everyone loves what the music's saying, so it's one aim, one thought, one destiny.
Speaking there was Donovan Brown, who will feature in our next episode, Sound Systems and Sound Systems. Tune in to find out all about the earth-shattering amplification that has been lifting the spirits of Kirklees since the 1960s. Thank you again for listening to another podcast in our 12-part series exploring a wide range of Kirklees music scenes. Remember, if you missed anything in this podcast and you'd like to know more, with the description of this episode on whatever platform you're listening to it on, you should be able to find all the information that was included. If you can't, feel free to contact us on social media via Music in Kirklees, Let's Go Yorkshire or samh.song. We're around on Facebook and Instagram. Follow us there too. Full recordings of most of the conversations heard in this episode are available at the West Yorkshire Archive Service. The conversations recorded for the Oral History Project include those with people from a wide range of musical disciplines. And we'll hear some more next month, so see you then.
This was a Let's Go Yorkshire and Sam H. Song production. The host and producer was Sam Hodgson. The podcast has been supported by Kirklees Council, Kirklees Year of Music 2023, and the National Lottery Heritage Fund, Town Sounds explores the musical histories of Kirklees to uncover untold stories through the voices of local people living musical lives. For more information on this podcast, please visit musicinkirklees.co.uk.